Nightclub Bouncer Tales, Chapter 2, Heartbreak. It is now time for the part where the underdog gets serious about the fight ahead of him. Think about Mickey saying to Rocky, "Get up, you son of a bitch." "I didn't hear no bell." "Get up, you son of a bitch." Mickey loves you. Somebody cues the music and Mama said knock you out. I'm gonna knock you out. Mama said knock you out. The result of Big Rev's words sent me on a course of action that put me in the best shape of my life. The fear of something happening to me in the club was overwhelming. I knew I needed to better equip myself, but the problem was how. My finances were spread too thin to afford a gym membership. Even if I could afford it, when would I have the time to go? How do I get bigger, stronger, and become more of a threat so I don't get killed in these nightclubs? Growing up, my favorite boxer was Mike Tyson. Me and my father never spent much time together, but some of my fondest memories were of us watching the Tyson fights. Tyson, who was a smaller heavyweight than many of his opponents, was knocking guys out with brute strength. I researched his 1980s regiment, and man, it was intense. 500 push ups, 500 shoulder shrugs, 500 dips, and 2,000 sit ups, plus a 4 mile run 6 days a week for 6 weeks leading to the fight. And that was only his midday workout. I began to copy this workout as it required very little equipment to complete. Being near a military base had its perks. A soldier I met at the club gave me a duffel bag in exchange for free entry to the club. I filled the duffel bag with pillows and old discarded clothing to create a makeshift punching bag. For 6 months straight, I was on it. Run, push, pull, drop, up, repeat. Run, push, pull, drop, up, repeat. Every morning before work, it was the same routine. Run, push, pull, drop, up, repeat. It was around this time I landed a pretty solid home health job. If you can picture a swole Benson working with a well off family, that was the situation. One thing about this family was they ate and ate well. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner were like mealtime with the clumps. They did not mess around when it came to meals, which was okay with me. Nevertheless, with double food intake and an Iron Mike Tyson training regimen, I put on 25 pounds, working myself to the best shape I had ever been in. Bigger, stronger, and now feeling unstoppable, I was much better prepared for whatever threats came my way. A person can change on the outside, but still have internal conflicts that go untouched. My internal conflict was no matter how much I ran, pushed, and pulled, I couldn't deny how much I missed Lili and the children. During my runs, I would often think about our first date. Say, Lili, since neither one of us have a Valentine's Day, you might as well roll with me. Smooth, right? Yeah, I know. She laughed, but said yes, that'd be a nice idea. When the day came around, I was bursting with excitement. I had on my navy blue Kango hat with the long sleeve cocaine white shirt, the navy blue Docker pants with razor sharp creases. Coated with my Polo Sport cologne and a dozen roses in hand, I was ready. I pulled up, and when she stepped out of the house and smiled, I knew this night was going to be perfect. We went to dinner and talked all night. I told her about my dreams of being a lawyer, fighting for justice at the nation's capital. Being a nurse was in her plans. She liked taking care of people. We continued about some of our other plans. As simple as it was a special night for us both. Strolls down memory lane only lead back to the present. How did we go from young lovers to sworn enemies? Run, push, pull, drop, up, repeat. It's not easy getting over somebody you love. You can flirt, go on dates, and even be intimate with somebody else, but turning off a lifetime you spent with a person is not simple. You don't share holidays, birthdays, sick days, family reunions, and other special moments with someone and shut it down with no issue. This just isn't working. I miss my family. That's all there is to it. I miss my family. Nevertheless, here we go again. Friday night, back at the club. By this time, I had developed a reputation as a no nonsense bouncer. I was cool, but when I told you to move, I meant for you to move. Under Big Rev's mentorship and surveillance's influence, I started creating a name for myself. Fights were still happening all the time. Hey, it's a nightclub business. Ghetto nightclub business at that. There were always rumbles, but I was smarter in the way I handled these rumbles. Male or female, if I had to get you, I was going to get you. Surveillance and I spent many hours practicing restraint holds and other self-defense tactics to defuse the situation. However, with all the preparation, nothing in the world could prepare me for what was coming my way. One night, a man approached me making small talk. Hey, what's up, Super Swole? I didn't think anything of it. I've been pretty muscular almost my whole life. People were always making little comments about my physique. I thought he was just another one of those people making small talk. However, standing almost a foot taller than me, he walked up, squeezing my arms, poking at my latest physique. I was like, come on, man, chill with all that. The man replies and says, Jayden, you're doing the damn thing. Appreciate it, man, I said in response. The night went on, and we took care of business as usual. Nothing of importance stuck out until I got home that night, and this question crossed my mind. Who the hell was that guy, and how in the hell did he know my name? Nobody calls me Jake. Everybody calls me Jay. 10 a.m. rolls around, Saturday morning's here, and it's time for the same business. Run, push, pull, drop, up, repeat. Who the fuck was that guy? I'm the type of person that when something strange happens, it stays in my head. It tends to linger on for an extended period of time. I couldn't wait for the time to go back to work that night at the club. I was hoping that this guy would show back up. As Saturday night came, I searched the floor to see if he had made it, but nothing. I tried to play it off like I was cool, but some of the guys could tell something was on my mind. I assured them that I was just tired and that everything was all right. With the club closing, it is now time for the most dangerous part of the night, which was clearing the parking lot. We went out and manned our stations just as normal, like we always do. At this moment, I was under the belief that the man was a no show until suddenly he wasn't. He drove past in his Dodge Dakota pickup truck while yelling out the window, Yo, Jayden, catch you next time. Now I knew something was up. I couldn't place it, but I was for sure now. I went from being curious to being nervous. I don't do well with being nervous. I had no idea who this guy was, but I was about to find out. After we cleared the parking lot, I talked to CD about pulling some of the security footage from that night to see when the guy came in. The plan was to check his moment of entry and see if we could blow up the ID card that he presented to the person working the door. Looking at the footage carefully, we noticed the man never entered the club. He only stayed in the parking lot. I'm no longer nervous. Now I'm pissed. Something is off. Something is definitely off. The following week, it was back to business, taking care of the family and working on my body. Nothing changed. Same business. Run, push, pull, drop, up, repeat. When Friday night rolled around, Big Rev told me to come pick him up for the club. On the way, we talked about the situation. Jay, man, you bugging, said Big Rev. Rev, nah, man, I'm telling you, something is wrong, man. I replied back. Who calls us by our government name? I mean, there are only two people who call us by our government name, our mama and the government, we both said at the same time. But Jay, your mom know how to get in touch with you. And why would somebody from the government want to be bothered with you? Rev, something's off. Something is off. I continued to press. Speaking of the government, has your lawyer called you back? Asked Big Rev. Not yet. Not yet, I said in response. Jay, you know you can't run forever. Reverend, come on, man, cut it out. I'm not running. I'm just, I'm just running, he says, cutting me off. Man, speaking of running, you need to run your big ass down to the gym and work out with me in surveillance. I said in my response. Nah, he goes, I ain't trying to do them baby weights y'all be doing. I don't see why not. Looks like you carrying one. We both laughed, as we was known for our legendary back and forth banter with each other. If you had as much height as you do jokes, people might be able to see what you're talking about. Whatever, man. We continued on. Minutes later, we pulled up to the club and met the rest of the crew. It was a usual situation. The guys stood outside till about 10:30 when the crowd started showing up. As the parking lot got thicker, we all manned our stations. About halfway through the night, I saw surveillance in dispute with this guy and went over to back him up. The gentleman had a switchblade clipped to his pants pockets. My man, shouted surveillance, you cannot have that knife inside this club. Either you give it up, or I'm going to arrest you for carrying a concealed weapon inside a nightclub, which is a felony. It was an honest mistake by the guy. He didn't mean any harm. He forgot it was clipped to his pants, and plus our door person didn't do their job. The man was busy having a good time. He complied, handing me the knife while assuring surveillance he didn't want any trouble. I put the knife in my back pocket and told the guy to find me at the end of the night. Once outside, he could get it back. The night went on, and everything was cool. Or at least it was until I looked at the front door and saw Lili hand in hand with the mystery man. I'm sure the look on my face suggested I had all the answers I was looking for. While trying to measure my next move, I paused and asked myself if I was that bad of a husband to deserve this. I admit that I was an abusive man. Not physically, but verbally abusive. My words were reacting to the pain Lili was causing. While we were married, I felt she always put me last. No matter what, I was last. I would often think, how can a spouse get up every morning, leave the house for the day, travel through their circles of travel, obey or follow everyone else, but come home to their spouse and be so disagreeable? Her boss changes her schedule out of nowhere. She has nothing to say. Her doctor tells her to take these pills. She does so with no question. The city tells her to put the trash on the curb, and without failure, she complies. However, when I say anything, my request is questioned, challenged, and ultimately disregarded. Who did they make a marital bond to? Their circle or their spouses? This drove me nuts. Compounded with her magical ability to keep us in financial debts, I couldn't control lashing out how I felt. How fucking stupid are you? What kind of fucking sense does that make? That dumb shit you do. I see why you didn't finish high school. You do the dumbest shit ever. The more she disregarded me and led to problems I had to fix, the more I spoke to her that way. Blinded by how her combative ways affected me, I was also blinded by how my words affected her. I'm sure we both felt we were undeserving of the treatment we gave each other. Even still, Seeing the woman you love walk in and smile with another man strikes a chord. Little bro, is that your wife with that dude? Yes, yes, man, I hollered back with hostility. Are you cool? Asked Surveillance. No, not yet. I took a moment to pause and gather my next move. I could hear Surveillance in the background saying, Come on, Jay, don't do it. But I had to walk over and say something. Although jealousy is a characteristic mainly associated with females, in all reality, males carry this virus a lot more frequent than what they are given credit for. I slowly made my way over to the quote unquote happy couple. At the moment I stood in front of the mystery man, he says, Well, hey, baby, look who we ran into. If it isn't Jayden, gets no love, making a play on my last name. How about you fetch us some drinks? As I size him up and down, I turn to Lili and say, So what are we doing? Jayden, I'm just here to have a good time. I don't want trouble. Well, I think it's time you both left then. You are so immature, she fires back. No, I replied. I'm so done. At this moment, the mystery man reaches out and grabs me by the shoulder. I pause, then I say, Get your fucking hands off me and get out of my club. He begins to say, What are you going to do if I don't? While he was in mid sentence, I flipped the guy to the ground using a fireman carry takedown. We tussled briefly as Surveillance and some of the other guys tried to break it up. I was determined to get at this man, even shoving my own security team out the way. Eventually, the conflict boiled over outside. We were both trying to press through a pair of human barricades so we could throw down. I'm yelling, screaming, cussing like a sailor at the guys to get out of my way. In the middle of my rage, I remember I had that switchblade I collected from the gentleman earlier. I pulled out that switchblade and popped the button. Man, what an impact it made. Pow! The switchblade sounded like a gun going off when activated. With the pop of the blade, all the guys backed up and gave me some space. Jay, put the knife down. Put the knife down. I didn't listen. I pressed forward toward the guy. Let me tell you, for a big man, Big Rev had cat-like reflexes. Cutting off my path, he stepped in and grabbed me forcibly, telling me to let it go. Drop the knife, Jayden. Let me go, Reverend. Jay, I told you, I don't need you to die in this club, and I don't need you killing in it either. It's over. Your marriage is finished, and you need to see it. I was enraged, furious, angry. As a part of my training to be a home health aide, we were taught the 5 stages of grief. I call them DABDA: denial, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. As I stood there, gridlocked with this super heavyweight who was trying to talk some sense into me, I hit the final stage of grief: acceptance. This is a hard one. It's extremely difficult to accept the idea that there's absolutely nothing you can do about what is that is. With acceptance comes pain. My body became riddled with pain as I began to take in what was happening. I cried. Big Rev started to cry as well. In a poetic display of grief and sorrow, the unstoppable force is now being immobilized by the immovable object of truth. Tears rolling down our faces and hitting the asphalt only further cemented what I already knew. My marriage was over, and there was absolutely nothing that I could do about it. Chapter 2: Heartbreak Conclusion. All rise. When you are sitting in court and you hear those 2 words, you naturally go, oh shit. This means that the judge has entered the courtroom and it's officially time to get down to business. Post the aftermath of the Switchblade incident, Lili and I were in court for our temporary orders pending our divorce. This was the middle point before the official conclusion of our marriage. The last time I was in court with my wife was at my misconduct of a firearm charge a few years prior. Now I got to flashback to this story. The twins were about 6 months old when this happened. I was working two jobs while going to school twice a week, providing for the home. At my night job, I would talk to Lili on the phone until the end of my shift. One particular night, as we were talking, I mentioned how hungry I was. Funny you say that, she goes. I'm cooking fried catfish with rice pilaf, french fries, and hush puppies. That was one of my favorite meals. I couldn't wait to dig into that. Cool, baby. Be looking forward to it. Anything for my hard-working man, she says in her response. As miserable as I was at work, it became less painful knowing one of my favorite meals awaited me when I got home. At the time, her two nieces were staying with us. As I had previously mentioned, I felt like others' needs came before me. This situation was no different. Lili's sister Laura was a crackhead who would run hot for days at a time on the drug called speed. She would go and go and go for 3 days and then finally crash for 3 or 4 days. Lili, being the next of kin, would be the point of contact for the schools when her sister was a no-show to pick up the girls. Lili's sister would MIA for a week, putting the burden of childcare on Lili as well as myself. Her nieces loved to eat. As I walked through the door upon arriving home that evening, I received a casual greeting as usual from the two oldest girls. Daddy's home, yay! Meanwhile, the twins were sleeping in their cribs, and I peeked in the shower to let Lili know I was home. Place in the microwave, baby, she calls out. Cool, I reply. As I enter the kitchen and pop open the microwave, boom, nothing was there. Confused, I go, well, maybe she meant the oven. I go over and check the oven. Nope, nothing there. Still confused, I call out, Baby, where's my food? She stepped out of the bathroom and checked the microwave. As it opened, her facial expression shifted. I know my nieces didn't. Oh, man. At that moment, I had one thing to say. Out. 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 They gotta go, and they gotta go right now. But Jay, she said softly, oh, but Jay, my ass, nothing. Get them out and get them out right now. I continued to grumble, eating my damn dinner after I done worked all day, lost their mind. Continued on. Retreating from further dispute, Lili gathered the girls up and took them to her mother's house where they would remain. A couple of days later, we were startled. We were startled by hostile knocking at the door. Anybody banging on the door this aggressive has to be someone looking to cause trouble. I grabbed my pistol and holstered it in the small of my back. Fresh off our high, Lili's sister, Laura, had come to demand we hand over her daughters. She started in with her rant about what a loser I was, just talking big shit. I interjected with warnings that she needed to leave my porch and go elsewhere. I tried to tell her that her kids weren't there, but she refused to listen. We argued a little bit back and forth before I gave her a final warning to leave. When I did, out of nowhere, she responded with a pure heart and soul, I'm Rick James, bitch, pimp slap right across my face. I hit her back and tackled her to the ground, putting her in a chokehold. At this moment, Lili had run out of the house and begged me to let her sister go. I never liked her sister. Never. This wasn't one of those I wish a motherfucker would moments. It was I'm glad a motherfucker did moment. However, the moment was short lived when two men got out of the car and hit me with the "What up, cuz?" I released the chokehold and waited for the two to come closer. As they did, I fired 2 rounds in the air, causing everyone to scatter. Lili's sister made it to the car, and when she drove away, she called the police. Minutes later, the cops came and arrested me for misconduct of a firearm and terroristic threat. I spent the weekend in jail and was bonded out Monday. Those were the scariest 2 days of my life. I was the sole breadwinner of the family, and I'm looking at doing 6 months to a year in the county jail. I had no idea what I was going to do. My livelihood was in the hands of the American justice system, a system with a reputation of being unkind to poor people of color. Fortunately, my worst fears did not come to pass, as 1 year later I had my trial date and was found not guilty on all charges. The jury saw I wasn't the monster that the prosecution was making me out to be. Although I was relieved, I still carried a lot of resentment towards Lili from that time on. Looking back, this was about the time I started hitting her with all the verbal abuse. Now, here we are again, back in court, but this time it's love versus love and an all out battle for control through separation. Once we were entrenched into each other's world, now no distance on earth would be too far apart. As expected, her legal team did everything they could to make me out to be a monster. The previous gun trial was brought up, as the verbal abuse, and the recent switchblade incident. They even had a grainy photo of me in a distraught state holding the switchblade by my side. Nevertheless, I was pretty calm in answering the questions. I thought for sure I was going to have it stuck to me in the typical fashion that men experience in divorce court. Still, I was proud of the way I handled myself, and I returned to my seat when the questioning was done, next to my lawyer, and began to wait on the cross examination. Immediately after, it was Lili's turn. I was wise in paying for that attorney. He had done his homework and discovered some information I was not privy to. Before me and Lili started dating, she was arrested for giving a false identification to a police officer. When questioned about it, she tried to dismiss the claim by blaming it on her sister, saying she had used her ID while she was in another town. What she didn't realize, or maybe she just forgot about, is that when you are arrested, you are fingerprinted before being booked into jail. Fingerprints don't lie, but she did. When it was established that she was caught up in a lie, and also the lie was told about another judge who was friends with our presiding judge, much of her testimony fell apart. At the conclusion, it was determined that we would have split custody until the conclusion of our marriage. Victory. May not seem like much, but it was a victory for me. Furthermore, the split custody also split my financial obligations in half. A huge weight was lifted off my shoulders. However, like many other joys that I experienced in my life, it was short lived. The next day will be a working night at the club, and I will return to the dramatic nightlife that was now part of my weekend woes. I don't remember, but for whatever reason, I was running late to work. I hated that. I hate being late to anything. 10 o'clock means 9:45, 9:50, not 10:15. Even still, I was running late. Looking back, it had to be God's way of protecting me from what I was walking in on. As I pulled up to the job, there were several police cars in the parking lot. When you see a slew of law enforcement vehicles with flashing lights, especially as a black man, it would be wise for you to go the other direction. I parked in the parking lot of the gas station across the street and watched the melee unfold. DEA. If you know, you know. The Drug Enforcement Agency was on scene. I didn't know what was going on the inside of the club, but later Big Red filled me in. Club management had been suspected of dealing drugs and using the club as a front for their business. Police raided the place in hopes of finding drug contraband. Ultimately, they came up short. To save face, they found a few so called health code violations to momentarily shut the club down. Some of the other guys were searched and eventually brought up on possession charges. Nothing major, but I'm the type of guy who understands warning comes before destruction, and it was in my best interest to pay attention to those signs. Some people suggested that surveillance had used its police connections to rat on members of the club. Others say it was some rival club owners with made up lies to steal business from the club. I didn't know what to believe. All I knew was that I had dodged a bullet in court, but continued association with the club kept me looking down the barrel of another loaded gun. I pulled off. I went home, changed clothes, and went to another spot on the other side of town just to clear my head. I went to the bar in order to drink, only to feel a slight tickling sensation on my lower back and the sound of a familiar voice saying to me, Hercules, long time no see. I turned around, and there she was, 5'2", peanut butter thick, Mercedes. Not the car, just Mercedes. Hey girl, where you been? You still alive? I said to her. I should be asking you that, she said in her response. You're the one who doesn't have good sense to get out of the way when vehicles are speeding towards you. Hey, I'm Hercules. I'd have been all right, I said, pulling her close to me. 24 hours after the first rip to separate from Lili, and now I was bursting at the seams to get next to Mercedes. What is ahead of us next?